Hi, this is Kimball Bullington. I'd like to talk to you a little bit today about risk management, which is one of the enabling processes in our model of supply chain management and our SCORE model. So let's get into it. So we'll first ask the all-important question, why should I care? And you should care because they can affect your life in a big way. Some disruptions are dramatic and devastating, and everybody knows about them. Some are not. They can occur anywhere in your supply chain. We've got global supply chains, and we're actually more likely to have some sort of disruption in the supply chain. Famous, maybe not so famous, manager, sort of mentor is Machete Eddie, and Machete Eddie said he only had two rules. One is, don't get me fired, and the second is, don't hurt anybody. And disruptions could end up doing both, and so that's another reason why we should care. Risks are everywhere. Quality and safety risks, supply shortages, legal issues, security failures. Quite often, I think in terms of three characteristics of risk: quality, cost, and service or timeliness. So we can have risks that the quality won't be there, that you have a defect in some way. Risks that your expenses will become out of control or unpredictable, and risks that you'll be late or not be able to provide your service on time. Some design issues in the supply chain, not necessarily talking about product design issues, but they could be, is globalization can increase risk. Outsourcing can increase risk. It doesn't always, but it can. Clock speeds, customer demands, just the faster we work. Lean production and JIT, having little inventory, can create risk. In our text, it offered these as the top five supply risks: quality, inventory, natural disasters, economics, think in terms of cash flow or profit and loss, and transit loss. I'm not totally sure that's my favorite five, but they're worthy of consideration. And then we can employ a number of different risk management strategies to either reduce the likelihood of risk or to manage it. Supplier selection, supplier monitoring, supplier segmentation, which basically says I'm going to treat suppliers appropriately, depending on what kind of supplier they are. Contract language, hedging, so I'm buying product ahead of time. Near sourcing, which reduces some of the global risk, and because we just have shorter transportation times. And postponement, so I'm not going to customize the inventory of raw materials and even work in process until the last moment. Some risk reduction strategies: dual or multi-sourcing, geographical diversification. So in the last company I worked for, we had identified earthquake with a supplier in Japan as one of our major risks. And so geographic diversification would have been a way to address that. Inventory pooling and part standardization, which actually sort of acts like inventory pooling as well. And then tools for continuity planning, disruption scanning can identify ahead of time what are the types of disruptions I'm likely to face, how might they affect me, and here we're looking at how likely, potential impacts, how prepared are we to respond. And this is about planning this ahead of time, ideally, and recovery plan and enact and execute when the disruption happens and so on. So here's the process: phase one, disruption scanning and monitoring. I'm watching, I've already identified, I've already planned, and now I'm monitoring, and then once the disruption happens, then I'm assessing it and saying, how widely am I exposed? For instance, when we start talking about part shortages, the chip shortages that we know hit the automobile industry, then exposure risk would be what are the different car models that are exposed, but also even what are the different systems within the car models that are exposed, and what suppliers are exposed to this risk. And finally, risk mitigation, prevention, and recovery. So I'd like to deal with the current crisis, but also make sure it doesn't happen again, and that I recover as quickly as I can. Okay, so I have two final tools, and then we'll be done here. The first is failure modes and effects analysis. In failure modes and effects analysis, I'm looking essentially at three different aspects of failure. The severity, how bad it is. It's usually a scale 1 to 10, where 1 is not severe and 10 is some definition of very severe. And likelihood of occurrence, how likely is this to happen? 1, again, not very likely. 10 would be very likely, almost certain. And then detectability. And so will I be able to detect this in the early phases so I can mitigate the effects of this? And in this case, if I can detect it early, that's good. And so that would be a 1. If I cannot detect it, that's bad, and that would be a 10. So you're looking at particular processes, and then how could those processes fail, the different failure modes, and then what would be the effect of each of those particular failure modes. You'll see sometimes the same effect coming from different failure modes. And then what could cause those different failure modes, and those causes deserve some action. Now, we take our severity, we multiply it times the likelihood of occurrence, and multiply that times the detectability, and we end up with a risk priority number. And the idea is actually after you first create this spreadsheet and you got all the numbers in there, you would sort then by decreasing risk priority number, we just call it RPN, decreasing RPN. And so this 256 is our biggest one. We'd put it at the top, and we'd make sure that we had addressed that in some meaningful way. And you address, each of your actions usually only affects 1 or at the most 2 of these risk factors. So for instance, request receipt acknowledgement from the supplier increases certainly your detectability that something is wrong, so you can respond to it very quickly. It doesn't in itself prevent the shutdown or reduce the severity, but it at least gets us detecting, so we're less likely to run out. Here's one that is also of interest. You have a severity of 8, a likelihood of occurrence of 1, and detectability of 2, and it is trailer got stolen. And the answer that was put down here is request carrier to use a safer route. But if you think about it, that's not changing the severity at all. That's just changing the likelihood of occurrence, which is already not likely. So that might not be the best action for this, and which brings up another. We usually turn around and basically duplicate this this failure modes and effects analysis to the right, and after we have recommended actions, then we go back and we say, what did that do to the severity, likelihood of occurrence, or detectability? We come up with revised RPN numbers, and sometimes that tells us don't bother with a particular action. We need to use a different action. So very powerful tool in planning. And another powerful tool is just cause and effect diagrams. And if you're wanting risk reduction, then you could look at different processes that might address risk in some way or another, the people who are involved, information that might be critical, and technology, environment, and then finally measures. And this is just an extremely powerful tool. I don't want our slides to go, or video to go too long, so I'm probably going to come back and have another video that just addresses this tool. Thank you, and we'll see you in part 2.